Eli wiped his hands on a rag, looking out at the dusty horizon. The small planet he called home was quiet. Too quiet, except for the occasional hum of passing ships. Life had never been kind to him, but he had learned to be strong, to find satisfaction in simple things, fixing broken machines, solving problems, and helping anyone who came his way. It was a lonely life, but it was honest. The rain started suddenly, drumming hard against the metal roof of his small workshop. He didn't mind it much. Rain was rare here, and it washed the world clean for a little while. That was when he heard it. A soft, uneven knock at the door. Eli frowned. No one ever visited him. He wiped his hands again and opened the door. There she was, a woman soaked through, shivering, her clothes clinging to her like water itself. She was not like anyone he had ever seen. Her hair shimmered with colors he couldn't name, and her eyes were deep, like she had seen centuries of the galaxy. She looked fragile, but there was also an unmistakable strength in her stance, even in her exhaustion. "Please, I need help," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. Eli didn't hesitate. He stepped aside. "And come in. We'll fix you up first." She hesitated, looking at his small, dusty workshop, cluttered with broken tools and spare parts, then stepped inside. The warmth hit her, and she let out a soft sigh, almost like relief she hadn't realized she needed. Eli grabbed a blanket and handed it to her. She wrapped it around herself like a shield. "What happened to your ship?" Eli asked, noticing the small hovercraft parked awkwardly outside, its engine smoking faintly. "Trouble. I didn't see it coming," she said, her voice quiet but steady. She didn't explain more, and Eli didn't press. Some things, he had learned, people only revealed when they were ready. He knelt by the hovercraft, tools in hand, and started working. Sparks flew as he repaired the engine. Wires twisted and rewired under his careful hands. He didn't care about her rank, her importance, or the world she might control. He only saw someone in need. And in that moment, that was all that mattered. As he worked, he stole glances at her. She watched him too, her gaze softening. There was something in Eli that drew her in. Honesty, simplicity, and an unspoken courage. He didn't flinch at her presence. He didn't bow or stare in awe. He just worked. That, for someone like her, was extraordinary. Finally, the engine roared to life, filling the workshop with the sweet sound of a machine coming back from the dead. Eli wiped his hands on his rag again, breathing heavily but smiling. "You're good," she said, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion on her face. It was the first smile he had ever seen from someone so powerful yet so human at the same time. "You'll survive this," he said simply, as if survival were the only goal worth mentioning. "Your ship's running and the storm's passing. You're okay." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then she spoke almost to herself. "You don't even know who I am, and yet you helped me." Eli shrugged, smiling again. "Doesn't matter who you are. People need help. That's enough." She felt a strange warmth in her chest. In her life of power, fear, and endless responsibility, no one had ever helped her without expecting something in return. And here was a stranger, a simple human, treating her like she was normal. The rain outside slowed, and the sun peeked through the clouds, casting long golden streaks across the workshop. Eli handed her a cup of hot tea, and she took it, her hands trembling slightly. It was ordinary, simple, and perfect. For the first time in years, Alara, though she didn't tell him her name yet, felt like she could breathe. She didn't know that this mechanic, this small human, would change her life forever. She didn't know that in helping her, Eli had already set the wheels of destiny in motion. And Eli? He didn't know the truth about her either. He only knew one thing, that helping someone in need was the right thing to do. And sometimes being human was enough to make a difference, even in a galaxy ruled by the richest, most powerful queen alive. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. Eli was already at work on other machines when he noticed her sitting quietly in a corner, wrapped in the blanket he had given her. She didn't speak much, only watched him with those deep, strange eyes that seemed to see straight through him. "Do you want some breakfast?" Eli asked, gesturing toward a small stove. He quickly prepared a simple meal of bread, eggs, and tea. The smell made her stomach growl softly, and for the first time in days she smiled. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost fragile. But in that soft tone, Eli heard strength too, the kind that could command fleets and worlds, though she didn't reveal that yet. Eli served her a plate and sat across from her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask who she was or why she needed help. All that mattered was that she was here and she needed someone who cared. "You don't even know my name," she said, nibbling at the bread. "Doesn't matter," Eli replied, sipping his tea. "Names don't fix things. People do." She laughed softly, a sound that echoed strangely in the small workshop. No one had ever treated her like this. Not diplomats, not generals, not even her closest advisors. They all treated her like a weapon, a leader, or a prize, but Eli treated her like a person. Hours passed as they talked quietly. She told small stories about her travels, careful not to reveal her true identity. He spoke of his life on the small planet, his struggles, his simple joys and fears. Each story, each word built a bridge between them, invisible yet strong. At one point, Eli noticed she was still shivering despite the blanket. Without thinking, he grabbed a second one and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Better?" he asked, smiling. She nodded, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in centuries. She wanted to tell him everything, who she really was, the empire she commanded, the wealth she possessed. But something held her back. Here she didn't need titles or riches. Here she could just be. "Hilara, a woman in need of kindness. Why are you helping me?" she asked finally, her voice curious. "No one helps me like this." "Not ever," Eli shrugged. "Because you need it. That's enough for me. People deserve help when they can't help themselves." Her eyes widened. That simple answer shocked her. She was used to people bowing for power, fearing her for her fleets or flattering her for favors. But Eli, he had nothing to gain. His kindness was pure, honest, and unselfish. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched him work on his own tasks, repairing a small generator that had broken down. The way he focused, the way he moved was mesmerizing in its simplicity. She had seen countless heroes in her life, warriors and leaders who had accomplished impossible things, but none had the quiet strength of this small human. By midday, the hovercraft outside was finally repaired. Eli wiped his hands and looked at her. "It's ready. You can leave when you want." She rose slowly, feeling a strange reluctance to go. She had grown attached to this small workshop, to this ordinary man who had given her something she had forgotten long ago: hope. "Before I go," she said softly, "I want to give you something for all you've done." She reached into a hidden pocket and pulled out a small, shining crystal. Eli took it, curious. "This thing is valuable. More than anything on your planet." Eli shook his head, smiling. "I don't need it. Your friendship, your trust, that's enough." Ilara's heart swelled. She had expected fear, flattery, or greed, but never this. This was the first time in her long, powerful life that someone had helped her, without expecting anything in return. And in that moment, she realized something incredible. Maybe power wasn't what made someone strong. Maybe kindness was. As she walked toward her hovercraft, she turned once to look at him. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. And though she didn't tell him her name, he felt the weight of her gratitude, the silent bond that had formed between them in that small, rainy workshop. And Eli? He didn't know it yet, but he had just changed the life of the most powerful woman in the galaxy. The hovercraft hummed quietly as Ilara prepared to leave. She paused at the doorway of Eli's workshop, staring at him. Something about this ordinary man had captured her attention, had touched a part of her she had long forgotten, the part that was human, not commander, not queen, not ruler of a galaxy. "I should tell you something," she said softly, her voice hesitant. "You helped me without knowing who I am, and I think you deserve the truth." Eli looked up, curious but calm. "The truth?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. She took a deep breath, her chest tightening. I command the galaxy. I am richer and more powerful than any queen alive. I rule fleets, planets, and systems beyond your imagination." Eli blinked, processing the words. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His mind tried to grasp the enormity of what she was telling him. But then he looked at her, at the tired human expression in her eyes, and something inside him smiled. "So what?" he said finally, shrugging. "That doesn't change anything. You needed help, I helped. That's it." Ilara's eyes widened. Nobody had ever responded like that before. Nobody. They bowed, they feared her, they flattered her, they schemed around her, but Eli, he didn't care about her power, her wealth, or her status. He cared about her as a person. A strange warmth filled her chest. For centuries, she had commanded armies, made alliances, crushed enemies, but she had never felt anything like this. Something about this small human reminded her of the part of herself she had hidden, the part that longed for normality, for trust, for kindness. You don't understand, she said, shaking her head slightly. People would kill to have a single favor from me. They would bow just to touch my hand, just to gain a small portion of my wealth. Eli leaned against a workbench watching her. And what good is all that if you can't trust anyone? If nobody sees the real you? She paused, the words sinking in. Nobody had ever asked her that before. Nobody had ever questioned her in a way that mattered. It was always about loyalty, strategy, or fear. Never about heart, never about trust, never about being human. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't finish the sentence. There were no words to describe what she felt. Gratitude, awe, longing, and something deeper, something she had buried under centuries of duty. Eli gave her a small smile. It's okay. You don't have to explain. I don't need to know everything. I just wanted to help. She looked at him for a long time, feeling the weight of what he had just said. Here was someone who could have been terrified by her words, by the revelation of her power. But he wasn't. He was calm, steady, and kind. He saw her as a person, not a ruler, not a legend, not a galaxy commander, but as a woman in need of help. For the first time, Elara realized that her power, her wealth, her command over thousands of worlds meant nothing without people like him. Without trust, without kindness, without someone who saw her as she truly was, all her victories felt hollow. Eli noticed her hesitation and asked softly, "Are you going to be okay?" Elara smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "Yes, because of you. You've reminded me of something important. Even someone like me, even a queen, can be human, can feel hope, can find someone to trust." Eli shrugged, modest as ever. "I just did what anyone should do." She shook her head, laughing softly, a sound that made the small workshop feel warmer, brighter. "No," she said. "You did more than anyone should. You've changed me, and maybe you've changed me for the better." The hovercraft's engine purred in the background, but for a moment neither of them moved. They simply looked at each other, two very different worlds colliding in a small, dusty workshop at the edge of the galaxy. Elara had commanded millions, wielded unimaginable wealth, and controlled fleets of ships. And yet here she was, humbled and inspired by the courage of a single human heart. She realized that true strength wasn't about armies or riches. It was about trust, kindness, and the courage to help when it mattered most. And Eli? He didn't yet understand the full weight of her words. But he did know one thing. Helping her had been the right thing to do, and sometimes that simple act of humanity could change the fate of the galaxy. The sun had just risen over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty plains, when Eli noticed the first signs of trouble. Scouts from neighboring systems had spotted Elara's presence on the small planet, and word spread faster than the wind. Pirates, mercenaries, and greedy opportunists began to move, drawn by rumors that the galaxy's most powerful commander was vulnerable. Elara had faced threats before. Entire fleets had fallen at her command. Worlds had bent to her will. But this time she felt something different, a twinge of worry that came not from strategy charts or war rooms, but from concern for a single human. Standing beside her, Eli noticed the change in her posture and asked gently, "What's wrong?" "They know I'm here," she admitted, her voice tight. "And they'll come soon. I need to leave. But I don't want to leave you behind." Eli shook his head, determination flashing in his eyes. "I'm not leaving. I don't care who comes. If they want to get past me, they'll have to try." Elara stared at him, her heart tightening. This small human had no fleet, no weapons, no armies, and yet he stood there, fearless. His courage was raw and real, the kind that couldn't be bought or commanded. She felt a swell of admiration and something deeper, something she hadn't expected. Trust. The attack came before the day fully began. Ships dropped from the sky like dark shadows, blasters firing, engines screaming. Eli grabbed what little weapons he could find, and Elara activated the defensive systems of her hovercraft. But the real fight, she realized, wasn't just in the sky. It was on the ground where Eli's bravery would be tested. Bullets tore through the walls of the workshop. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Eli didn't falter. He moved quickly, shielding Elara when she stumbled, using his knowledge of machinery to set traps and obstacles for the attackers. Every action he took was instinctive, human, and brilliant in its simplicity. Elara watched him amazed. She had commanded countless battles, orchestrated wars across multiple star systems, and yet she had never seen someone fight with such courage, not because of power, not because of training, but because of heart. Eli reminded her that ordinary humans could do extraordinary things. One of the attackers tried to seize Elara, underestimating Eli. With nothing but a wrench in hand, Eli blocked the assailant and struck with precision. She gasped, realizing that this simple mechanic was more than just brave. He was extraordinary in ways that fleets and weapons could never measure. When the smoke cleared, the attackers were either fleeing or captured by Elara's emergency defenses. Eli stood, panting, his clothes torn and face smudged with grime. She approached him, hand trembling slightly, not from fear but from emotion. "You," she began, voice choked. "You saved me. You didn't have to, but you did." Eli shrugged, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Someone needed to. That's enough." Her heart ached at the simplicity of his words. He had faced dangers she couldn't imagine, not because he wanted glory, not because he wanted power, but because it was right. For the first time, she realized that the greatest warriors didn't always command fleets. They had courage, empathy, and an unshakable sense of what was right. Elara took his hands in hers, and for a moment the galaxy outside didn't exist. All that mattered was the human before her, standing tall against impossible odds. "This," she whispered, "this is why I trust you. Not because of what I can give, but because of who you are." Eli looked into her eyes and smiled, the kind of smile that could light up the darkest corners of the galaxy. "Then let's survive this first," he said simply. And in that moment, Elara understood the truth. Power and wealth meant nothing without courage and kindness, and one human heart could change the course of the galaxy. The battle had ended, leaving the workshop scarred and the small planet quieter than ever. Smoke lingered in the air, and the ground was littered with debris. But for Eli and Elara, something more profound had changed. A bond had formed, unspoken yet powerful, a connection beyond words forged in danger, trust, and simple human courage. Elara sat on a crate, her eyes tracing the edges of the workshop. For centuries, she had commanded fleets, ruled planets, and made decisions that affected millions. She had lived a life of power and authority, but never had she felt the way she did now, vulnerable yet safe, overwhelmed yet calm, awed yet inspired. Eli had shown her something no throne, no ship, no weapon could. That kindness and bravery, even in the smallest human, could move worlds. Eli knelt beside a broken panel, fixing it without hurry. He looked up and smiled, brushing soot from his face. "You okay?" he asked casually, though his eyes searched hers for more than just words. Elara smiled faintly, the kind of smile that held both relief and wonder. "I am, thanks to you. You saved me not because you had to, but because you wanted to." He shook his head. "I just did what anyone should do. No one deserves to be alone when they need help." She looked at him, feeling a wave of emotion she had long buried. No advisor, no general, no ally had ever looked at her like that. Not at the person she was beneath the crown, beneath the command. For the first time, she felt seen, understood, and respected, and it terrified her. "You don't understand," she murmured. "I am not just anyone. I am the supreme commander of the Galactic Alliance. I have wealth, power, and fleets that can crush worlds. And yet, you treat me like a human being. You don't care about any of that." Eli smiled softly. "Doesn't matter. People are people. That's all that matters." Her chest tightened at his words. For centuries, she had been taught that power was everything, that trust was rare, and that weakness could get you killed. And yet here was a human, a simple man, teaching her the opposite. He was showing her that bravery, kindness, and compassion were more powerful than any fleet, more valuable than any treasure, more enduring than any empire. She reached out, hesitating for a moment, then placed her hand on his shoulder. "You've changed me," she said quietly, her voice full of emotion. "I don't know if I can go back to the way things were." Eli met her gaze, his own expression calm but serious. "You don't have to. You can be who you want to be. Even a commander, even a queen, can choose kindness over fear." Her lips parted slightly, the words hitting her like a wave. In his eyes she saw courage and hope, something she had never allowed herself to feel in centuries of ruling. For the first time, she imagined a galaxy where power was used not for fear or control, but for helping, protecting, and inspiring. Hours passed, and they continued to talk quietly, sharing stories of their lives. their dreams, and even their fears. She told him of the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders, and he listened without judgment, simply nodding, offering small comforts. He didn't flinch at her past, didn't envy her wealth, didn't seek favor. He only offered understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and purple, Ilara realized something extraordinary. She had found someone who saw her as a human being first, a queen second. And that realization warmed her in a way that no palace, no throne, no fleet ever had. "You are extraordinary," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Eli shook his head again, smiling with that simple honesty she had come to love. "I'm not extraordinary. I'm just human." Her heart swelled. In his humanity, she saw the greatest strength she had ever known. And in that moment, she understood something she had never known before. That the richest, most powerful person in the galaxy could learn more about courage, kindness, and love from a single human than from all her armies combined. And Eli? He didn't seek recognition, glory, or reward. All he had done was help. But the effect of that help would ripple across the galaxy and change Ilara forever. Days passed quietly on the small planet, but for Ilara, each moment with Eli was transformative. She had spent centuries commanding fleets, enforcing laws, and controlling empires. She had wealth that could buy entire star systems and power that could bend planets to her will. Yet in his presence, all that seemed distant and hollow. Eli had a way of seeing the world simply, honestly, and courageously, and in that simplicity he had shown her the meaning of humanity she had long forgotten. They worked side by side, repairing broken machines and preparing supplies for her next journey. Each time Eli laughed, she felt a spark of joy she hadn't felt in centuries. Each time he offered advice, untainted by ambition or fear, she realized that even the smallest human choices could have a power greater than entire armies. "You know," she said one evening as they watched the sunset, "I have always thought that strength was about control, about knowing the galaxy, commanding it, bending it to your will." Eli looked at her, leaning against a crate. "And now? Now I know it's about courage, kindness, and trust," she whispered. "It's about seeing someone's heart, not their rank. It's about helping when you don't have to." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "You've changed me, Eli. I can't go back to being the ruler who feared everyone and trusted no one." He smiled gently. "Good. Maybe that's a start." Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out and touched his shoulder. "I want to be better," she said softly. "Not for titles, not for power, not even for the galaxy, but because of you. You've shown me that being human, truly human, is stronger than anything I've ever commanded." Eli shook his head modestly. "I didn't do anything special, I just helped." But she knew it was more than that. His help had saved her, yes, but it had also inspired her, reminded her, and awakened a part of her she had buried under the weight of crowns and fleets. She began to see the galaxy differently, not as a set of resources to control or enemies to defeat, but as people, ordinary beings who could rise to extraordinary things if they were treated with care, respect, and compassion. Over the next few weeks, Ilara began making changes. She sent aid to worlds that had long been neglected, offered protection to planets caught in war, and intervened where injustice had reigned. And every time she acted, she thought of Eli, the human who had reminded her that true power was not about fear or riches. It was about heart. Eli never asked for recognition. He continued his work quietly, fixing engines, repairing systems, and offering guidance when asked. But his presence had transformed Ilara entirely. He had shown her that a leader could be compassionate and strong, that a queen could trust, and that kindness was a weapon more powerful than any fleet. One night, as they stood on a cliff overlooking the twin moons of the planet, Ilara turned to him. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked, voice trembling. Eli shook his head. "I just helped." "No," she said firmly, taking both his hands. "You've changed the galaxy. Not with ships, not with armies, not with wealth, but with courage and heart. You've reminded me that even someone like me can be better. That's more powerful than anything I've ever commanded." He smiled, simple and honest, and squeezed her hands gently. "Then I guess all I did was be human." Ilara laughed softly, tears brimming in her eyes. She had fought wars, ruled empires, and controlled millions, yet here she was, humbled by one ordinary human. For the first time in her life, she felt hope. Not the hope of power, but the hope of love, trust, and true humanity, and in that moment, she understood a truth that would guide her forever. No amount of wealth, no fleet of ships, no throne could ever be as powerful as a human heart guided by courage and kindness. The galaxy had changed, quietly but profoundly. Worlds that had once feared Alara now flourished under her protection. Planets that had been forgotten now received aid and guidance. And though she commanded more wealth and power than any ruler in history, the true transformation began not with her fleets or riches, but with one human beside her, Eli. He stood on the balcony of her flagship, hands resting lightly on the railing, gazing at the stars stretching endlessly before them. She joined him, her presence calm and radiant, the kind of calm that only comes from trust and understanding. Alara no longer saw herself solely as a commander. She saw herself as a human being, a leader who could inspire, protect, and care without fear, and she knew she owed much of that to him. "You've changed everything," she said softly, her voice barely above the hum of the ship. "Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. You've reminded me that courage, kindness, and humanity are stronger than fleets or wealth." Eli turned, smiling simply. "I didn't do much, I just helped when it mattered." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "That's everything. One human heart willing to act can change a galaxy. You've shown me that, Eli. You've shown me that being human is the greatest power of all." He looked at her, his expression calm yet sincere. "Then maybe all it takes is believing that humans matter. Even the smallest act can make a difference." Alara reached out, taking his hand. Her fingers intertwined with his, a silent promise between them. "It's more than a difference," she said. "It's a legacy. And it started with you." The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the hope and trust they now shared. Alara had once thought that her wealth, fleets, and power defined her. Now she understood the truth. Her heart, guided by courage, empathy, and love, was her greatest strength. And Eli, a man who had simply acted with humanity, had unlocked that strength. Over the following years, their bond grew. Eli continued to work quietly, helping wherever needed. But his presence inspired Alara to become a leader remembered not for fear, but for compassion. Planets once at war found peace. Worlds once starving found sustenance. And across the galaxy a new story emerged, not of empires ruled by power, but of hope guided by heart. Alara often watched him from the bridge of her flagship, marveling at the simplicity and honesty of his actions. No titles, no wealth, no fame, just a human being acting with integrity, courage, and kindness. And yet, in that simplicity, he had accomplished what entire fleets could not. He had reminded the richest and most powerful woman alive of what it truly meant to be human. One evening, as the twin suns of a distant system dipped below the horizon, Alara turned to Eli. "Do you realize what you've done?" she asked, her voice tender. "I don't think so," he replied humbly. "I just helped," she smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've given me hope, trust, and courage. You've reminded me that even a queen, even the richest woman in the galaxy, can learn from the heart of a human. That is immortality. That is legacy." Eli's hand found hers, a gentle squeeze. "Then I guess we're both leaving something behind," he said. "Yes," she whispered, resting her head briefly on his shoulder. "A better galaxy because of one human who dared to care." And in that quiet, ordinary moment they both understood the truth. The greatest power in the universe was not ships, armies, or wealth. It was courage, kindness, and the humanity in each heart willing to act. One human had helped another, and in doing so had reshaped a galaxy, leaving a legacy that would outshine stars and outlast empires. The galaxy would remember Alara as a wise and fair leader. But in secret, the story that would live in whispers across worlds was about the mechanic who helped without knowing, who changed everything simply by being human. And that story, simple, pure, and true, was more powerful than any throne, richer than any queen, and braver than any warrior.